Hi, this is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and talented T-Touch practitioner for animals and people. And this is Tristan. He's a Corgi. And this is another episode of Conversations with a Corgi, where we are starting the end of our wrap-up of our series on flower essences. And once again, today we're in the garden where you can see my beautiful hibiscus tree, commonly called Rose of Sharon in this area. It is the most perfect color of blue purple, and so in honor of it today we are wearing our clothes that match it. And today we're going to be talking about a flower essence that many people don't even realize is a flower essence. Many people have it in their cupboards or in their medicine cabinets or in their first aid kits, and they don't even know that much about it. And so today we are going to be talking about a flower essence that many people know about called Rescue Remedy. Rescue Remedy comes in a cream, which is in this box. Here's its container. It comes in a cream. It comes in a tincture. And for our convenience, it also comes in a spray. And I have used all of these for many different things, and I have to say I really need them in all of these forms in my medicine cabinet. But if you can only get one, I think I would probably use the spray the most with pets. So let's talk about what Rescue Remedy is. Rescue Remedy is indeed a flower essence. And let's distinguish that from other things. Many people think it's an herbal supplement or something, but in fact, Rescue Remedy is a collection of primarily 5 flowers made into these different kinds of application techniques. It also comes in little homeopathic pills, and it also comes in like a kind of a candy that you can suck on, for instance, when you're taking a test and you might be nervous for a long time. So Rescue Remedy is distinguished from herbals because it is a collection of flower essences. Therefore, it's homeopathic, and there's very, very, very small amounts of these flower essences in the components that make up Rescue Remedy. And Rescue Remedy was developed by Dr. Bach, that's B-A-C-H, and he was the father of flower essences. And so he found one particular flower in this essence to be particularly helpful in emergencies. And then the other flowers he found, when added, really intensified its properties of the original flower to make it multi-useful and really beneficial for many people and pets. And the components of Rescue Remedy include paradise apple, the most important one, the rock rose, which is related to the sunflower. And again, so many meaningful, important aspects to the sunflower. The connection to the earth, the connection to our higher consciousness and air and sky. And the rock rose has also been called the sun rose. And then we also have the clematis, which has been called traveler's joy, and it really is just a beautiful traveling flower with a long vine. We have impatience. Tristan's getting sleepy. Now you won't be able to see him. We have impatience, and we have the cherry plum and the star of Bethlehem. And those are the 5 main components of Rescue Remedy plus 1 extra. So let's talk about what Rescue Remedy really is. When you have an essential oil, that is a very concentrated form of the plants and all of the parts of the plants, or it could just be some parts of the plants, but it's a very concentrated pharmaceutical grade oil. It's very different from a flower essence. And then an herbal product might be something like rosemary ground up and taken as a pill. It's very helpful for colds, actually. So a flower essence is in fact made often by putting a flower in some water in the sun. There are other ways to create it by putting crystals in water near the flowers. And then that water is diluted several times to come up with what is the flower essence. And so that is what is made up of Rescue Remedy. So its key ingredients include Star of Bethlehem, which reestablishes the original energy pattern that has been broken up by the accident, trauma, or abuse. And it helps cope with emotional and physical shock and connect the body with the soul and with heaven and earth and higher and lower. And that's one of the components. And again, the other really important one is the rock rose. What do we use Rescue Remedy for? It's for first aid, shock, trauma, injuries, physical and emotional, and for those who are weak and depleted or imbalanced, and particularly for those with a low life force. And when I tell you the story of how it was developed, you'll see why that applies. And it's also, again, originally 5 flowers, and then there's been 1 or more added. And it's for someone who checks out under stress. So the person who just can't really focus. If you're having a really hard time at work and you can't do anything because you're so stressed, Rescue Remedy would work in that situation because it gets you back in your body and in the situation. It gives staying power, courage, patience, confidence, and focus so that the body can heal. And it's often used, Rescue Remedy, for people and animals who are unconscious, and I've used it often in those circumstances. And it's also good for any little accidents in life, little mishaps, physical, emotional, small or big, and support of animals in particular in illness, trauma, and for veterinary procedures. And it is, as I learned, also really useful for houseplants. If you have a houseplant who's really struggling and looking really sick, you can put a couple of drops of Rescue Remedy in the soil when you're watering it, and it should restore some of the life force of that plant. I'm going to try it. I have one plant that I love who's a little sad because of the weeks I went away and he didn't get watered so much. It also works with the life force of an animal because, in fact, it has been charged with the life force of the flowers, which are the fullest expression of the life force of a plant. So Rescue Remedy can really help you when you're in a life and death situation, as well as when you're just nervous about an exam. And it is for stress and trauma. And to use it, many people, you just take the tincture like this little bottle and just put a few drops on your tongue or in a glass of water, or you can put it on the pulse points on your wrist or on your neck up here, or on your dog on the same locations, on his ankle or on his mouth. And a lot of people will just put a little on their finger and let the dog lick it, and they almost always will. And for horses, I've put it on a little piece of carrot. And it's really important to notice when you're buying your Rescue Remedy whether you're getting one that's dilute in water or alcohol. You don't want to use the alcohol product on animals, and in fact, or children for that matter. And in fact, I always use the one that is water-based just because I want the purity of the flower essence to not be interfered with by the properties of alcohol. So when do you use it? For an example, a person might use it if you're afraid of flying, 1 hour before your flight and every hour while you're on the flight to keep you calm. Same with a test. You might use it while you're studying for your test a few hours before you go in, and then if you're able to, take a little bit during the test or rub it on your pulse points. You can lick it or smell it from that perspective, and it will get you through. With our animals, it's really important to use Rescue Remedy for things like visits to the groomer, the stress of thunderstorms and loud noises. If your animal is excessively barking or your cat is hissing, again, when that's caused by stress, it's great for separation anxiety, for travel. It's a really important thing if you're taking your pet on a long distance trip, or if you have a cat that's been super stressed getting into his box for a trip to the vet, you should definitely use it then. And then it's also good for an animal when he's adapting to new surroundings. And so again, with Rescue Remedy, the most important thing to know about using it is that for everyday things like a trip to the vet, you should use it a few hours before you go, not when you come home from the vet. Of course, if you forget and that's what you end up doing, that works too. But it's most effective if you use it before the stress of the trip starts, and even for yourself before the stress of the trip, because I know many people I work with bring their cats here and they have issues getting their cats in the box until I educate them about some better ways to do that. And for the person, it's so stressful worrying about getting the cat in the box that sometimes it's good for the person to take the Rescue Remedy as well. Like, let's say your vet appointment's at 2 in the afternoon, you might start taking Rescue Remedy hourly with your cat at 9 and 10 and 11. Or, you could space it out a little bit more. But the thing that's going to make Rescue Remedy most effective in that circumstance is to use it before and after the situation, like going to the groomer. So, of course, if your dog has a terrible accident, like he's running in the woods and gets stabbed by a stick or hurts his paw, immediately use rescue remedy. And certainly in any kind of extreme trauma, hit by a car, attacked by another dog, your dog and your cat have a huge fight and they're both scratched up, definitely use rescue remedy immediately in that situation. So let's look at some of the things that are in a rescue remedy. My little bottles are running away. No. So one of the things that you should know about rescue remedy is that Dr. Bach developed it in 1933 when he was living in Cromer. And he was a British gentleman. And they were near the water, and he was in a fisherman's village, actually. And what happened was a fellow fell into the sea and was out there for a long time, and they finally managed to rescue him, and he was exhausted and frozen and, in fact, unconscious. And he was also delirious when he was somewhat conscious. So Dr. Bach decided to try his 5-flower remedy, mostly rock rose, with this gentleman, and he recovered. And then Dr. Bach thought that this was a really powerful thing, and so in 1935 he added the Star of Bethlehem and some of the other flowers that are in it to make it even more powerful today. So let's look at some of the things that are in rescue remedy. The first one that we're familiar with is the cherry plum. And cherry plum, as we said before, is for a fear of mental stress. It has a property to decrease dread and decrease a loss of control. It's for obsessive fears, especially related to suicide. And it soothes the solar plexus because of its connection with light and air. When you think about a cherry plum tree, they're big and they're tall and they have extensive branching, so you can see that they have some properties associated with the air. We need to turn this just a little. There we go. We were missing the corgi. Oops. This is what happens when everything is just a little tricky. Now you can see people. The cherry plum is useful in times of agitation, especially when there is a loss of reason and the staring eyes, which I've talked about happens when your dog is in a state of freeze. And freeze is another manifestation of fight or flight. So it's important to realize that that's a pretty serious situation for your dog when he has those staring eyes. And it's for things, cherry plum is for doing dreaded tasks, and it helps increase your confidence, and it calms your emotions. It's useful when you have a complete loss of control and when you are not able to think clearly. So cherry plum is an important thing to have in a situation when you're under great stress and you need to think clearly. So for instance, when I took the physical therapy exam 20 years ago, it was a 3-hour exam, and I think I actually was using rescue remedy because a friend of mine had recommended it, and just to keep me calm. And I had a tape with visualizations and meditations on it that was prepared by my friend Wendy, in fact. And one of the things that she said in the meditation was, anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and it will be useful to you. You will not be upset by this. It will be an important part of your exam, and it will be fine. So lo and behold, the guy next to me who's taking a pilot exam kicks the plug out of my computer while I'm in this online exam. And the people there had no idea what would happen. Would my exam be lost? Would I regain another hour at the end after they got me up and running? And they had to call to the main office. There was a whole lot of things going on. And I remembered what my meditation tape from Wendy had said. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. It'll be fine. It will work to your benefit. So I went in the room next door and laid on the floor and did a meditation and thought about a few things that I had on my exam. I believe I was in the middle of the cardio section, which was a very stressful part of it for me. And I went back in and took the exam, and in fact, no one knew if I was going to get an extra hour at the end, and I didn't get an extra hour. And luckily, I've been a teacher for a long time. I'm a good test taker. I didn't need the extra hour, but part of that was from the miracle of rescue remedy keeping me unstressed, and also that magic CD. So or it was a tape at the time because it was 20 years ago. So at that moment, I knew that everything would be fine and that my test would still go well and that I would succeed. And part of that was the rescue remedy keeping me calm. And I think I had some of the little pills in my pocket, and I was just taking those, putting them under my tongue. So the aspect of cherry plum with that loss of reason and inability to think clearly, that would be what I really needed in that situation. Impatience, which has also been called jewelweed, is another component of rescue remedy, and it has been used for poison ivy rash and clearing up skin problems, and it's also been used to induce vomiting and a diuretic. So think of it that way, as passing out the things you don't need from your body at a time when your body's in great stress. And one of the things Dr. Bach talked about with rescue remedy was allowing the body to have a time of peace and rest so that it could fully heal. And that's a really important thing to think about when you've got extreme trauma going on, because it does the rescue remedy calms the entire nervous system so that you can heal. And clearing out, the things that the impatience works with, the vomiting and the diuretic, that really helps clear out all the things that your body doesn't need to worry about. And as I said before, impatience is so powerful, and it's recently been tested for its properties to combat breast and testicular cancer. And it's been used for joint pain, and in fact, emotionally, it's known to bring comfort during pain. The flowers are cooling and mucilaginous, which is why they're good for burns and scalds. And if you are irritated, quick, or tense, it will help make you calmer. And it has some isoflavonoid properties in impatience. So as an herb, it's been useful to decrease menopausal symptoms. But really, what its parts are for the impatience in rescue remedy is to bring comfort during pain and to make you able to tolerate pain and to decrease some of that tension and quickness in your attitude when you are in a great state of trauma. The next component of rescue remedy is the clematis, and this is one of the original 5. And clematis, as we know, has tremendous anti-inflammatory properties. It's cytotoxic, antimicrobial, and as we know, it's a climbing perennial with over 355 species. And it's in the buttercup family. Again, that yellow flower. And we all remember holding the buttercup under our chin when we were children to see if we liked butter, which of course we all do, because the flower is so luminous, it reflects well on our chins when we're children and doing that game. Its origins are in the United States, and from the Native Americans, it was also used as a remedy for skin irritation, as well as treating tumors and cancers. So again, many of the components of rescue remedy are in fact useful for decreasing skin irritation. And again, it's that idea of when the outside is irritated, calm it down so the inside can heal it. And Clematis montana in Chinese medicine is an herb called mutong, which has been used to decrease fevers and increase urination and promote lactation. So again, getting the fluids moving, which is a really important thing in recovery. The seeds of clematis have been used in smoking, and Bach describes its use for those who are drowsy, dreamy, not fully awake, lost in internal life, for those who are unhappy in their current circumstance or living in the future and not in the present, or are in hopes of happier times. In illness, it's for those who are looking forward to death, especially reunion with a lost loved one. So, in fact, clematis would be really useful in extreme trauma. It brings stability. It brings you down to earth. It reconnects your soul with your body so that you can complete your business on this plane if you do happen to be leaving for the next plane. It's for hopelessness and apathy and those who are lost in their dreams but are in fact present here on this plane. And sometimes people who are animals that need clematis will appear sleepy and content, but in fact, on the inside, there is great turmoil and they are not connected to their current situation. It's for dreamers and those who are absent-minded, but have lost joy in life. So clematis is really important in trauma to bring you back to the joys of life, to make you remember the good parts of living on this earth. And in fact, Rescue Remedy, there's lots of things on the internet about Rescue Remedy and its role in people who had near-death experiences. So clematis would be an aspect of that, bringing you back to the earth plane from the higher plane to keep you connected so you can finish up your business in this plane. And the next aspect of Rescue Remedy is the Star of Bethlehem flower. And of course, that would have to be one of the major components of Rescue Remedy. It's for those who are in distress and need comfort. And of course, when you are in great distress, we all need comfort. I'm just going to try to level this out a little. There we go. Biscuit, you're falling. And Star of Bethlehem is for delayed shock or to neutralize the effects of past or present shock or trauma. It's great for PTSD, which, you know, you can, if your dog had a big attack with another dog and it's only an hour later, even 10 minutes, they can already be experiencing the effects of PTSD. It quickly restores the body's self-healing mechanisms, and that can be any kind of a physical, intellectual, or emotional event that has caused your body to need to engage its self-healing event properties. Anything that's been a shock, a big or a small one, the Star of Bethlehem will help you stay in your body. Again, that idea of aiding the system to stay in balance, and it corrects imbalance if there has been any kind of imbalance in the system. And if a pet needs this, he may appear withdrawn and have dulled senses. He may have decreased hearing and sight. And often that's what we see in a response for shock. It looks like there's nobody home. Often inexperienced people will think their pet is dying when they are in shock. Star of Bethlehem is the comforter and soother for pains and sorrows, and that's what Dr. Bach said about it in particular. So the comforter and soother of pains and sorrows. So it's really important to have it in something called Rescue Remedy for emergency situations or high levels of stress or anxiety. And again, the Star of Bethlehem, like the others, connects you to your higher self and reestablishes energetic links to dissolve trauma energy into healthy, restorative energy. Star of Bethlehem brings vitality, mental clarity, and inner strength. And that's, of course, what you need in a situation where Rescue Remedy would be beneficial for you. And the other two flowers that are in Rescue Remedy at this time, which in fact there are 6 in Rescue Remedy now. Initially it was Clematis Impatiens, Cherry Plum, Star of Bethlehem, and Rock Rose. And lately they have added the Paradise Apple, which we'll talk about next. And the Paradise Apple is interesting because it purifies your emotions and it restores a sense of inner health. When you are faced with health challenges or poor health, it will assist the body in ridding poisons from the past. It restores hope in your inner life. And it goes to the core of your healing and opens you up to the healing star within the heart, kind of like Star of Bethlehem. So that a healing star in your heart can glow and bring healing properties throughout your entire body. It's useful to purify your aura and help you see new dreams and new aspirations. And again, the Paradise Apple, seeing new dreams and aspirations. When you are in a state of extreme trauma or injury, you think it's hopeless and you're just going to die, the Paradise Apple will help you say, wait a minute, I can't die. I need to go on. I have things I need to do in my life. And in fact, I've had a near-death experience, and that was exactly what brought me back, was knowing I had more things to attend to, more people I needed to connect with, more changes I had to bring about on the earth plane, and I was not ready to go, and that snapped me back here in a second. And the Paradise Apple and the Rescue Remedy does the same thing, bringing you right back to earth. It has been associated with goddess energy, think about Eve and the apple, and the divine feminine, and the pursuit of abundance. And again, that divine feminine, that power of being receptive, and the moon, and all of the feminine qualities, the balance of yin and yang, the Paradise Apple will restore that. It gives you a radiating glow from the soul, just like the Star of Bethlehem brings you a radiating glow from your inside and from your higher power. And the paradise apple brings immense love and hope during a time of transformation. It's for peaceful clarity, health, and having psychologically beneficial thoughts, because so many times in a state of extreme trauma, there is stress and loss of hope. Also, paradise apple has been associated with motivation for self-care and having a positive outlook. It counteracts mental fuzziness, worry, doubt, indecision, toxic emotions such as anger, fear, and jealousy. And it creates balance, strength, happiness, well-being, acceptance, wholeness, and it integrates mind, body, and spirit. So you can see why paradise apple was added to the rescue remedy, because of these properties it has to bring about balance and restore hope for the future and integrate mind, body, and soul. The final component is the most important part of Rescue Remedy, which initiated Dr. Bach's work to create Rescue Remedy, and that is the rock rose. And as I said, it's related to the sunflower, and therefore we have that aspect of grounding and communicating with a higher self at the same time, and being on the earth plane and also in the spiritual plane simultaneously, and bringing that back into balance the way it should be. It has a yellow 5-petaled flower, and the rock rose is not common. It's native in the Mediterranean and in southern England, but the flowers are similar to the monkey flowers or the daisies I was sitting by yesterday. They're bright yellow and they're low growing. And Dr. Bach called the rock rose Rescue Remedy. And in fact, on the bottle, if you buy a Bach flower essence of rock rose, it does still say on it, Rescue Remedy. It's for emergencies when there is no hope. And like that fellow he pulled in out of the sea, it seemed hopeless that he would recover. And the rock rose is what brought him back. So if you are in a situation that seems hopeless, maybe you didn't study enough for your test and you just are doing poorly in the class, when you feel hopeless, the rock rose is going to help you focus for that test. And that also applies to a situation, maybe you find a bird that has fallen out of the nest and it looks hopeless that he won't make it. And you can just put a drop of Rescue Remedy on his beak and he will absorb enough of it, and that might be enough to turn him around from a situation that looks hopeless. Rock rose is for accidents, sudden illness, for fear and terror, or if the condition is even serious enough to cause someone to lose consciousness. And in fact, you can use it for those who are unconscious. So you put Rescue Remedy on the lips of someone who is unconscious, and it can be enough to revive them and give them, restart a heart or something like that. And in fact, I was using Rescue Remedy in a really dramatic situation. Someone I was close to had been hit by a car on foot and was in the hospital. At the same time, someone a friend of mine knew had been hit by a car on his motorcycle and was also in the ICU. And I didn't know that her friend was there too. So I met her in the elevator and she was taking little drops of Rescue Remedy and telling me that she brought it along to give her friend after the motorcycle accident. And I, of course, always have it in my bag. And so I also took a few drops of Rescue Remedy on my way upstairs in the elevator to the ICU. And it was really helpful. It was a super, super stressful situation. Really a lot of family problems and issues going on. And when I was alone with the unconscious person, I was able to get a few drops of Rescue Remedy on her wrists, and I am sure that it helped her. I mean, she made a pretty good recovery in a situation they thought was hopeless. And the same with the fellow from the motorcycle accident. Sadly, he died, but he was able to regain consciousness and communicate with his family members before he passed. And that is so important sometimes, to finish up your leftover business on the earth plane before you move on. And so thank God I ran into my friend in the elevator and we had that experience of discussing Rescue Remedy, because it was beneficial for both of us and the people that we cared about who were in the ICU. Rock rose is for terror. And if it's also important if you have had such an extreme fear of death, it will cast out that fear of death. And as I said, you can use it for those who are unconscious. That could be a dog or a cat or a bird who fell out of a nest, or maybe a horse who's colicking and has actually passed out. You definitely need Rescue Remedy when your horse is colicking. It eases the urgency and the danger when you have rock rose. When the patient is terrified or in a panic, when all hope seems lost, when it seems absolutely hopeless. And in fact, one of the things you should know about Rescue Remedy is that it's very beneficial to use it on the tips of your pet's ears, right here on the end of the ears. On a spaniel, it would be down at the base of the ear, well, when their ear is down at the end of the ear. You can put a few drops of Rescue Remedy on the tip of the ear and work that shock point, just rubbing it gently. Put your head up a little bit, Biss. We need to see your ears. Just rubbing it gently like this. This is a T-touch technique. I'm not making any circles. I'm just supporting the ear with one finger and rubbing the shock point with the other finger. And this is really important to know if your dog has a case of bloat, any situation, poisoning, any problem that's going on that could cause your dog to go into shock. Put a few drops of Rescue Remedy on the ear and work that shock point. Same for your horse. Times of colic, if they get caught in the fence. Horses are really prone to injury sometimes, and it's really important to be well schooled in where that shock point is at the tip of the ear, how to work with it, and using Rescue Remedy on the shock point, because of the properties of the rock rose, can be really helpful to help your horse survive and keep them out of shock. As long as they're out of shock, you can keep moving them and working with them when they have a case of colic. But if they get too shocky, they'll also get hypothermic, and you won't be able to keep them warm, and they'll be shivering, and a whole host of other physical things will manifest and make it really hard for your horse to recover from colic. So really important to know about that shock point, and even veterinarians have used that point. My sister and her husband, who are both veterinarians, her old husband, and many veterinarians I've come across in the years have learned to use that shock point for animals that are in shock or in grave danger. And when all hope seems lost. Rock rose is important to use when there are threats of suicide or the potential for insanity or the potential for a nervous breakdown. When there is a potential for death to occur and it seems like hopeless depression. Rock rose gives courage in the face of fear and terror, and it's for a life-threatening emergency. It restores inner strength. So those are the components that make up Rescue Remedy. And Rescue Remedy, as I said, is a Bach flower essence. It comes in a cream. It comes in a tincture, which are drops. And it also comes in a spray. Now, I have used this spray. I've kept it with me sometimes when I'm at a training class or if I'm working with a group of dogs in my yard and one of them starts to look really stressed and just the person can't handle them and they are so far gone, they're panting, their eyes are staring. I've used the spray of Rescue Remedy on their nose in that circumstance, and it has helped them come back into their body so they can learn, and we can get them in a position where they feel safer and more able to cooperate with the group. So Rescue Remedy is really important. You should keep it around, and remember, it is a flower essence. It is made from the wonderful life force of the plants, the flowers, and it is really an important part of everyone's arsenal. And Rescue Remedy is so readily available now. You can get it even in a regular supermarket, sometimes in the pharmaceutical section, and you can get it in health food stores, of course. It's readily available on Amazon in every form, and I highly recommend having, as I said, I use the spray, the tincture, and the cream fairly often. You can put the cream directly on a cut. Tristan has a place under his elbow now where he has a bit of a bacterial infection. I've been using tea tree on it, but in the time before I knew about tea tree, I might have used Rescue Remedy cream, and that would have been helpful. So Rescue Remedy is really important for shock, trauma, injuries, physical and emotional, for those who are weak or depleted, who feel imbalance in their life forces. It gives them staying power to go on, and it can be for all of life's boo-boos, big or small. And any time that there's stress in your life, such as a person with a fear of flying, or a fear of an exam, or a fearful meeting with your boss that day, any number of things in your life that can cause you stress, Rescue Remedy can be beneficial for. And as I said, I always buy the ones that are made in a water solution, not the alcohol solution. When I first encountered Rescue Remedy in the early 1980s, there was a woman in our group who was using it every day, many times a day, who was also in recovery from being an alcoholic. And she went through several small bottles of Rescue Remedy in a week. And she was very stressed. She was learning a lot of new things, and it was a difficult situation for her. But in fact, the alcohol component of Rescue Remedy was also satisfying some of her addiction issues. So someone in the group said you need to get that in a water form because you are in recovery and you cannot be using this highly alcoholic based. And the alcohol is really just there to preserve it. And so now we don't need that. We can use it water with it, and you keep it in a cool, dark place like a medicine cabinet. So be really aware when you're buying it that you get the one that's in the water solution for use with your pets or your children, unless you want the one with the alcohol in it, which I personally don't. So it gives you confidence, courage, patience, and focus so that your body can heal in a time of stress and so that your body can function. You know, when you're in an exam, your heart racing and you're breathing heavily and you aren't able to think to the best of your ability. You need to be in balance. And so the Rescue Remedy brings you back into balance from a stressful situation so that you are able to cope and to recover. And as Dr. Bach said, the most important thing is to get your body in a situation where it's calm and peaceful so that it can heal. So Rescue Remedy engages the body's self-healing mechanisms. And I have used it during craniosacral therapy sessions. I've used it during Tellington T-Touch sessions, especially if I'm working with someone who had a past car accident in particular, because that is a time of extreme trauma, and Rescue Remedy works for traumas past or present. So you just put a few drops on your tongue. You can put it in a glass of water. You can put it on the pulse points on your wrist. Sometimes I'll put a drop on my hands when I'm working with someone who has a past trauma. That could be an animal or a person. And because it is just a high vibrational frequency and a subtle energy, it can really help restore health and well-being for your pets and for yourself. And as I said, it's great to use it before you go to the groomer, during thunderstorms or times of loud noises, the hunting season. You might want to use it several times a day during the hunting season to help your dog be calm with the sounds of guns in the woods. If there's anything stressful going on in your barn that day, you know, maybe there's some construction crew coming in or something, or they'll be loading the hay and your horse is nervous hearing the sounds over his stall, you can use it for a situation like that. If your dog is constantly barking due to stress, or if your cat is hissing due to stress, it can be useful for that. Travel anxiety, separation anxiety, and adapting to new surroundings. So make sure Rescue Remedy is a part of your medicine cabinet for your pet's health and well-being. And as I said, it comes in many forms. We've got the drops, we've got the cream, and I use the spray quite a bit. And Tristan has certainly had some Rescue Remedy at different times in his life. I have used it when animals are passing away, for the animal that's still here and for the animal that's passing. It's been really helpful to help them be calm and clear about what's happening to them. And again, we've used it with people in those situations, before and after surgery. And again, I emphasize before and after surgery because you want to make sure that your body is ready for the shock that's going to come to it of surgery. And certainly with Tristan, I used it before and after his neutering surgery. So this has been Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington T-Touch practitioner, and Tristan, who's a limp and tired corgi today. And we have been talking about the Bach flower essence called Rescue Remedy. It is really useful, and I have used it quite a bit. Let's see. Do I want to see comments from viewers? I have to swipe. Well, I can see little hearts and thumbs ups. I don't want to swipe because I have a very sketchy internet connection right here. So tomorrow we will continue talking about flower essences and sum up some of the main points of flower essences generally, and what you might need to remember about our series on flower essences, where we looked at the flower essences of botanical animal, and where we also looked at Dr. Bach's Rescue Remedy, which is a part of every animal lover's first aid kit. And don't forget, tomorrow we'll be on live at 9:25-ish. I've been running a little late because it just doesn't stop raining. And I know in the Mid-Atlantic it's supposed to rain tomorrow, but they're saying we will not be having rain in New England. What a surprise. And so we will be back tomorrow morning, and then on Sunday morning we'll be moving on to some other subjects. Thanks for joining us today, and everyone have a nice day. This is Sally Morgan and Tristan Corgi for an episode of Conversations with a Corgi. Everyone have a great day and find some sunshine in your life or in your day.